Hey guys, Tyler here with Western States Ferry Service. One of today's accounts is a jumping barn, and we got a pretty good chunk of horses to do there. But there's one in particular that's fun to work on. He's a challenge all the time. Really bad high-low heel syndrome, and has a left front that's fairly crooked. I struggle keeping him balanced throughout the cycle. I do all sorts of fun stuff on him. Very similar to Bosch, the horse that I highlighted a couple weeks ago. Left front's offset by a little bit, but it starts clean up in his shoulders. He actually comes in from his shoulder, kind of a narrow-chested horse, and then that left front especially sweeps to the outside as it goes through the knee and into the pastern, so that he ends up being pigeon-toed, crushes the inside wall, and actually particularly crushes the inside toe, and it also dishes fairly bad too. So what I want to talk about when I get there, and I hope that he kind of shows us, because he's a great specimen to study this on and watch how he trims. When you first put him in the cross ties, when he's ready to be shod at 5 or 6 weeks, he does best on a 5-week schedule, and occasionally we'll go 6 in the winter. Any longer than that, he just falls apart. Right now he's at 6, so he might be getting pretty ugly. But when he's standing static in the cross ties or just in a pasture, he will split his front feet with his right front forward and his left front back, and his left front will also stand just outside of his rib cage, and it's exaggerated when he's grazing. I don't think I'll be able to get any videos or pictures of him while he's grazing in that stance, but it really shows where his growth is happening, meaning that left front in particular is the bad foot. Nothing grows on the inside toe on depth, and it all grows heel on the outside. So as he grows through the cycle, it just does nothing but damage the joints if he goes too long and if he's too high on the outside. It's a constant struggle with this horse to keep his foot balanced throughout the 5-week cycle, especially if he loses shoes. He is prone to lose shoes. It's a tough one because he needs a very full fit, being a jumping horse, and the build of his feet and the conformation. He seems to get a little bit tender-footed in the winter, especially when they're jumping big. So we run pads on him. I run aluminums on him because it sure seems like the weight of the aluminum shoe helps to keep his hoof wall intact and keep a better quality horn on him. So he's quite the case, and it's kind of a head scratcher every time I work on him, but it is fun. So tag along and we'll see what he looks like, and hopefully he'll show us in his stance how he grows. And like I said, after he gets trimmed up, most of the time if I do it right, he squares up nice and even across the front of his chest, and he stands up tall and proud. It's a fun transition to watch, so we'll pile off into him here before too long, and let's see the progress. Made it to the barn. First off, what I want to do is I want to go and show you guys the stance that Tyndall holds while eating, because this is going to paint the picture on how to trim him and the reason why he grows it, why he grows. So notice that left front way back underneath him like that, and the right front way out in front of him. This stance, if he carries this stance over into the cross ties, I'll highlight it again and I'll talk more, but you see the stagger. That's what's going to accentuate his growth pattern and really cause that, particularly that left front to grow high on the outside and a high heel, and then that low front or that low heel on that right front to kind of slung out in front of him and crush his heels. So we got to account for that in our trims, and I'll see if he stands like that in the cross ties as well. But hopefully after you trim him, or after I trim him, he'll square up, and that means that usually that you got him balanced right. So standing in the cross ties, if you see his stance, trying to get directly in front of him, you can actually see how far to the outside that left front is to the limb, and how offset if you look at that fetlock as well. So that's his static stance all the time. His right front is also slightly offset in that fetlock down to the hoof capsule. So this tells you how he's going to grow. and gives you a game plan of how to tackle this horse. So let's get him trimmed up. I'm always having to rebuild hoof wall on him with acrylic. This time I was able to use Equilocks, a great product. Now this is really cool to watch. A big old frog chunk just fall off of there. Like that. That means it's very ready to be trimmed up. The blue tint in this foot is from the copper sulfate that I use to fight thrush under pads. I put it under any pad that I apply. Try and combat bacteria. It's the best way to do so that I've found. Now with most of my trims, especially on this horse, I have found I'm much better off to collect up the hoof wall with my rasp from the outside before I touch my nippers. Because right now this white line in the wall is so thick that, and I think that the reason that it is this thick is just because this foot flares and gets just basically just stretched out. So most of my trim needs to happen from the top to thin that back out rather than trim it down from the bottom. Because for one, I have gotten this horse sore before by taking him too short from the bottom. So I need to make sure that I'm conservative on the bottom. So most of my trim is going to happen before I pull my nippers out. Because if I can get my desired length in this foot by doing this, then there's no reason to take any from the bottom. Today, that's not the case. Today, I'm going to have to take some from the bottom. He's got a good thick hoof wall. He's measuring just under 3 7/8. Don't get hooked on the measurements too much. The measurements are pretty arbitrary. It's just for my own reference to make sure that I'm trimming both front feet to the same length. So taking more from the outside on this guy because of conformation, he grows higher on the outside, just like some of the other horses that we've highlighted. But see, I didn't take very much off of that foot. He's going to measure not much different, maybe 3/4, 3 3/4. But that's a very important number to remember when I go over to the next foot. But as you can see right here, I have not done very much to the bottom of the foot. And to me, this right now is coming out to be a pretty nice balanced foot already. The quality of our hoof wall looks pretty good. He goes back and forth depending on the time of year. Sometimes his hoof wall quality is beautiful. Sometimes it's absolute crap. But that's why we integrate some acrylics into it to assist the strength. Double check, make sure that we're still at like that 3/4 mark. And just below it, that's good.
This foot I've had to rebuild multiple times with acrylic. It just, as you can see, it just falls apart. But just like that foot over there, look at my frog. So my frog, I like to focus on how my frog looks at the end of each shoeing, because this tells me if the foot has enough depth and is imbalanced. So as you can see, I'm just cleaning out the frog with the back of my knife, but it's already beautifully defined naturally. A frog that's welded into the sole and I have to knife out the tip of the frog is trying to tell me that there's something wrong in the balance of this hoof capsule. It's just up to me to find out what that imbalance is. But a frog that's defined like this naturally is telling me that it's happy, it's functioning properly with the hoof capsule. The hoof capsule is cooperating with the limb. So I do a lot of evaluation on the frog, and I look to see what the frog is telling me. This is the high heel, so the way I trim my high heel, this is a little bit different than the low. On this horse, it's not that different because I collected up that low heel a lot, and I'm going to do the same with this one. But as you can see, I've got a lot of depth back here at the back half of my frog in the commissures, especially out here on this lateral commissure. Sculpt up the frog a little bit on the back. Okay, now we'll get a measurement. Perfect. We're at like 4 1/8. That's awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and take some depth off this toe, just a little bit, not much. And we'll go ahead and back this toe up a little bit. Okay, so keeping in mind our stance, this foot was the foot that was back, and he bears a lot of weight on his inside toe, which is partially why this wall right here just gets crushed, and this foot flares really hard to the inside. Grows length on this outside and then flares to this inside because that foot is back when he's standing and grazing, and it's to the outside of the body. So our job, counter that growth pattern. Take a good chunky heel off this outside right here. Leave that inside, or leave that toe, and then I'm only going to take a little bit from this inside right now. I always drop this foot to make sure that I'm medial-laterally balanced, because if I don't, it goes south fast. This hoof capsule requires a lot of imagineering, what I like to say, because with the way the walls broke apart right there, you gotta guess at your shape. Now, that's all right there. So keep in mind that that right front measured 3 3/4 when I got done, just under it. This one's still gonna be long. This one's still gonna be close to 4. Yeah, it's still 4. So when I come with my shoe, I might change the trim a little bit, but I'm reading the quality of the sole right here. This is waxy across here, so this is telling me that I don't really want to get much shorter than this. And referencing to our depth at the tip of the frog right here, we don't have a huge amount of depth, so I don't know if I want to take much more off the bottom here. I'll probably end up taking this back a little bit with my shoe set and then grinding in a rolled toe to account for needing a little bit more breakover. Now a shoe set with pads can be a little bit more difficult because you don't get to see the frog. So once your shoe is shaped, so I get the luxury today of resetting these shoes. What I'm going to base is on my shoe set is where my heels interact with my bulbs, or where the heels of my shoe end. I do want them back underneath the bulbs quite a ways, but I also know that on my fronts I do want to pull some off this toe, because that stretch lamina is trying to lead me in a improper direction, and somewhat trying to encourage me to set the shoe forward too far. So I'm running City Head 6s in this horse, because these Kirkhart Century aluminums, they are punched for a City Head. But this being a big horse, I've noticed that if I don't use a strong enough nail, and I can occasionally get away with a City Head 5, but not always. If I don't use a strong enough nail, the shoe will still shift because of its poor quality walls with those clips on, and I wind up racking the wall because the shear on the nails and the wall can't take the shear. And I've noticed that City Head 6s help quite a bit alleviate that, which is also why I 8-nail this horse. I will occasionally run a City Head 5 on the inside heel here to avoid having a close nail or potentially hot nail. Otherwise, we run City Head 6s all the way through them. Party foul. And I will grab a City Head 5 for this inside heel. Now for this shoe and this foot, I can only set this one, and then I'm going to have to acrylic. As you can see right here, all of this is just, it's got no structure. There's nothing up against this clip on this inside wall to give it any assistance in shearing. It's just gone. So I'm going to have to acrylic this inside here. So I'm going to set this one, and I'll pull them forward. We'll mix them up acrylic, and get this wall built back up. And hopefully it'll hang in there for us. The tricky part is getting this inside nailed. And having it hold before I get the acrylic set up in there. Unfortunately, you guys got to waste a bunch of nails on this one to get them done, because I set the shoe, I use acrylic, I end up pulling these nails that I put on this inside so that I can re-nail it into the acrylic. So it's a bummer, but that's part of this gig. Now, since I don't have to acrylic the outside, I can run all my nails in the outside. But I'm just going to waste 2 nails on that inside for now. First order of business on this foot, though, before I acrylic the top, is I'm going to put some copper sulfate underneath the pad. Just a little bit. It doesn't take much. And then I'm going to put some EquiPack. I like this pink label stuff because, for one, it fills all the voids underneath. That's just the general idea of the EquiPack. It fills up that soil region so no dirt or organics gets in there, but it also provides tremendous support to the polymer surface of the coffin bone. And I found on this horse, he does like it, but I specifically need to use this pink label EquiPack because anything that's more rigid or otherwise more of a dense EquiPack or packing, he will actually come up pretty soul sore. So I have to use this stuff, which this stuff comes out at the end of it, and it's super spongy. Like, here's the old one right here, and I can squish it like a sponge. It's really, really nice. I found that he really likes this particular style of packing. So I use this Equilocks. It's a 2-ounce single use. They're super, super handy. Probably a little more expensive than buying in bulk, but I don't use it as often anymore as I was a couple years ago, so I just buy them in single use deals. They work pretty good. They come in pre-dyed. This is a black one. Or they come in just neutral tan, which is pretty cool. So, but I've noticed in using these deals that they work best. They cure obviously the best and fastest when they're warm, but I have noticed that they seem to cure a little bit better when they're not too warm. So I actually carry a microwave on my truck in the off chance that I need to heat these up. But I have kind of adopted actually in the last year or so, just putting them on the floorboard of my truck when I travel in the winter, and they heat up pretty nice with the heater. So they mix up quick, but they set really fast too. So I've got everything ready. I got my stand set in here. Mix it up good. I've got my saran wrap because that works really good. So we'll get this foot up here. Get this camera angle right. Okay. And then I'm just gonna fill her up like I'm baking a cake and icing on the cake. So I try and push it in those voids, and especially this big gap on the toe right there. Getting it under this gap is essential, I've noticed, in keeping quality hoof wall. It's like it creates a false hoof wall. It gives it that support where it needs to be. Make no mistake, this is kind of an ugly job at first, but putting the saran wrap on it makes it really nice and cleans it up nice. So and like I said, I want to get it back here underneath that inside heel because it will provide some support as well. So we got that on there. Now this is critical. Saran wrapping this helps push it into all the voids and makes it cure that much better. Get about 5 or 6 wraps, maybe 10, maybe 15, who knows, however many you feel like, around on this foot. And then I'll almost always, I'll just give it a little extra. I'll try and push it off of that clip a little bit, but I'll push it into all the voids. Really get that stuff set onto that hoof wall. And this is just going to help maintain the strength and structure of this hoof wall, the little bit that is there, and give it a little extra assistance. Alright, acrylic is set. So what I like to do before I go back to the bottom side and nail fresh nails into it, I'm going to clean off the stuff that I don't need and give it a little bit nicer of an appearance. But I also, once I nail into this foot, I don't really want to do anything to the foot itself and the top dressing after I nail into it on this acrylic. Personally, I've found it's once you start nailing into it and you start rasping on it too much after you've applied it, it weakens it a little bit, and I've seen it fail, or I've had it fail a little bit sooner than I'd like to see it fail if I do too much after I nail into it. I use the edge of my rasp like that just to clean up in some of the smaller crevices and stuff. When the rasps are nice and sharp, that little edge does a really nice job. Here's the finished product. So one thing that I noticed right away in this horse's stance is that he's even underneath his body and his stance is actually closer together. So I interpret that as that my trim is as close as I can get it today. Like I said in the past in some other videos, I can only do so much on some of these horses' feet. This front left right here is far from exactly where we want it, but that's the unfortunate reality of how some horses are built. We can't get it dialed in each time. But what that shoe allows us to do is to basically fixate an artificial wear plate underneath that foot and put that plate, or at least that shoe, under the horse where the foot should be when the hoof capsule doesn't really want to cooperate, and allow you to do it easily. So that's where the benefits of shoes and then some pads, Echo Pack, all sorts of other stuff come into play. So I'm tickled with the result. I think that horse is going to look good for the next 5 weeks, and we go from there. Thanks for watching.